Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fringe North podcast. My name is Caitlin Townsend. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the project coordinator for Fringe North this year. And I have with me here today CONiKA. CONiKA, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is CONiKA. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm a musician, a hip hop artist, and I'm here to talk a little bit with Caitlin today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to this. So you were part of the summer festival this year, and I believe it was your first time participating in Fringe North. And was it your first Fringe festival ever as a whole too, or have you been to other ones?
I think it might have been my first Fringe Festival altogether, and it was a really great experience, honestly.
Oh,
I got
that's great.
excellent feedback, and I don't know, I liked that me and DJC kept it short and sweet for the
Mhm.
sake of, future opportunities, as I mentioned in our last interview. And yeah, here we are in the future opportunity.
That's awesome. Yeah, what was that experience like in terms of it being your first Fringe festival and the first time working with Fringe North compared to other events that you may have done in the past around the city?
Oh, it was really, really smooth. Like everything that was presented to me was presented very fluid and just very digestible, on point, very, ooh, how do you say that? Not timely. I can't remember the phrase at the moment, but everything was just very professional, and it was easy to read and easy to perform, just easy to
Mm,
be a part of. And I loved it.
awesome.
I liked it a lot.
That's great to hear. So what would your advice be to someone who's kind of like thinking about taking that step of getting involved, but maybe a little bit hesitant? I know you had shared in the summer that like you had sort of thought about it before, but that it's like a big step to get involved with a festival. So now having actually taken that step and done that, what would your advice be to someone who's kind of where you were prior to that?
I I feel like it's as with most new things people try, it's really nerve-wracking to do it the first time. But once you get that experience and you've gone through it one time, it like that the first time nerves kind of go away,
Mm,
and it just felt really rewarding. Like it was really simple to get done. It was, yeah, I don't know, I don't have much negativity around the experience. It was very
that's
open,
good.
and I love the ability to be able to be fully expressive in my creativity and have
Mhm.
that well received.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those who don't know or didn't get a chance to see CONiKA's show, it was called Introspections was the song, and it was fantastic and really awesome. So definitely keep your eyes out for that.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, so what have you been doing since the summer, and what kinds of projects do you have on the go, or what has happened for the last couple months for you?
Summer was pretty interesting. I got to go to a couple of different places, networking with an, a different group that I'm part of. We do virtual meetings a lot, and we're uh, like a network of artists from Toronto to Thunder Bay to like Montreal and Ottawa and Sault Ste. Marie. And yeah, so we were able to go to Toronto and record music down there, and able to go to Thunder Bay and celebrate the grand opening of an all Indigenous art space called Kinawin. And that was a fantastic night to be a part of. And in both places, we created new projects. And as a result of the whole summer, we ended up putting out a Spooky Dreamers EP on YouTube. So
Nice.
it's a nice, like, short and sweet little taste of what we were able to do. So that's available if anybody wants to check that out at I Believe TV on YouTube.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we can definitely put like links in the description too.
Yes,
Um, yeah, that's really cool. So what was that experience like to be able to be a part of that?
it was great because we've been meeting virtually for around 2 years now, give or take a month or so. And it was our first opportunity to get in a room together,
Mm,
and like just because the energy is different when you vibe in a room with a bunch of other creatives and you're just doing what you do on the spot, feeding off of each other. It was a great experience, and I feel like really bonded. I
mhm.
really like those guys. They're excellent MCs, great producers, and videographers, photographers. They're very talented people, and I'm honored to be a part of that group. So it's nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, in light of that, like it gets me thinking about like the importance of a team in this kind of work, and when you trust your team like that's so important. So, if you want to speak a bit to that in terms of like, how do you find as an artist those different producers and DJs to work with, and MCing and all those different pieces? How does that come together for you, and what's your process like around that?
My process around that is to really feed off of the energy that's in the room. I find that's when I'm the most inspired. When I'm meeting a DJ, a producer, or an MC that has a different style or a different perspective to bring to the table, that just like feeds my fire too. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Like I didn't think of it that way, and it might bring different phrases or memories or things to feed off of into my mind that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So I really love the whole community aspect of being a musician and being a creative person. It's my
Mhm.
favorite part of it.
That's awesome. So how did you first get into the arts and into music, and like, yeah, did it start out when you were pretty young, or like what is your backstory with that?
Well, I've always been exposed to music. It wasn't until in like my adult years that I really like reflected on how much music was in a part of my life growing up. But my grandfather played guitar, and he was the can't remember the title of it, but he went to the church and he would come up with the list of songs that they would do in praise every Sunday. Like he did that, and I would sing in church with him. Had opportunity to sing on the radio when I was younger.
Nice.
I was a part of choir in like fourth and fifth grade, and my uncles played music. My dad plays guitar and different things. So yeah, it's just always been a part of my life, and I hadn't realized it until recently reflecting. But it came naturally when I started writing poetry
Mm.
in like seventh and eighth grade, and there was um, a talent show, I think, at the end of seventh grade that I wrote this song slash poem to perform, and doing that was really great because I wrote it as therapy. It was something that I was going through at the time, and it was the first time I really felt like, oh, like this is fulfilling. Like I got to say what I wanted to say, and nobody's judging me. Like they're really listening, and some people are relating to it, and like it's a good icebreaker for certain conversations that could be had sometimes. So yeah, it was a really rewarding feeling. And from there, continued to write poetry. And in high school, a friend of mine was writing music, and we started. Oh, she asked me to collaborate on a song with her. So we collaborated that song and started doing that at house parties and stuff like that. And eventually got introduced to somebody who knew DJ Seath and put us on the bill together. So it's just been, it seems like it's come naturally.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
it's been effortless in a way where I just naturally gravitate towards people that have these opportunities or see something in me, some kind of potential, and they're like, you know what, I think you would get along really well with this person or in this
Mhm.
environment. Sure, I'll try it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like that you mentioned like even as a young kid when you were first getting into writing poetry, like partnering with your friend to work on it together. So that collaborative nature right off from the get-go when you first got into it, which is really cool. And like working with your grandfather too, that's like so cool. Um, so what if some of your favorite experiences been over the years with that collaborative process and like different partnerships that you've had?
Oh man, there's too many experiences. I should have prepared for this one. Uh, as far as collaborations go, man, every time I hit the stage with DJC and we've like prepared for a performance, it's been fantastic. We had the opportunity to do We Day and open up for Jordan for, uh, at the SR Center in like 2015. That was an awesome experience.
Nice.
Uh, man, just being able to collaborate with the artists that we host that come through town as well. There's some like West Coast artists like Doski and Brothers Grimm and stuff like that have been through town, and we've had the opportunity to just hang with
Mm,
and make music on the spot. I don't know. Every opportunity to create and collaborate has seemed to like build and increase my love and my anticipation for the next opportunity to collaborate.
mhm.
They're all fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. And what is your favorite like like what are you most passionate about with that collaborative process? Like, is it more like the writing or like the I guess like reshaping of things? Because I think often like in terms of song structure and that's something that comes up a lot with the collaboration process. What part really stands out to you as like the most fun and exciting and enjoyable?
I like the part where everybody's written their verses and then we get to put them all together and
Mhm.
hear how well they flow and tell the same, like one story told by three different people. We
Mhm.
sometimes like we don't necessarily pick and talk a lot about what we're going to write specifically about. We're given a song, maybe a hook or like an idea, or somebody starts to write and their first bar or two is the idea, or it sets the pace or the theme for the rest of the song. So just to see it kind of come out of the blue like that and create a fluid like piece that just, yeah, everybody coming up with the same energy and the same message
Mhm.
without really like intending to all of the time.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. That's really nice.
Yeah. And I'm curious in terms of like, does that usually happen collaboratively together or like, are you um, in different rooms or like I'm just wondering like the energy if there's a lot of connections in terms of how that process happens differently if you're collectively in the room versus if you're taking it and coming back 2 days later and all going your separate ways in between. Do you feel like that impacts the process at all?
Yeah, I feel like it can impact the process a bit because some people just work better in the moment and like when there's people to feed off of, when there's an energy flowing to be creative, it's like that's where your focus is. So some people are really well focused in those environments where we're all at a table together or in a room vibing or studio vibing. And then some people are able to step away from that and still kind of carry that energy and inspiration to finish their contribution and then come back and, you know, do what they're going to do. So it really depends on the people that you're working with. I'm open to different methods because my methods aren't set in stone. Like sometimes I can come away from a project and just like hammer it out when I'm on my own, bring it back and be done. But a lot of the time when I'm in a room with other creatives, what you get from me in that moment is what you're going to get from me for those projects.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. What has been your favorite place to collaborate and to write and to work on a project with, like in terms of atmosphere?
First place to come to mind is Ginawin. Ginawin in Thunder Bay that night after the grand opening. It's just a really great energy in that
Mm.
building altogether because it's an art space, it's indigenous based, and it's got a long history, that building too. I couldn't take the time to recall it to you, but it's an interesting history, an interesting space, and yeah, that's the place that stands out the most,
Mhm.
along with Children's Peace Theater in Toronto. That
Mm.
was a fantastic place to record too. I'd say those two are tied for my favorite.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about the collaborative process versus actually performing, would you say those are your favorite places to perform as well? Or do you have different, like, it's a different vibe, I guess, when you're creating versus actually like sharing what you've created?
Yeah. Well, there's not one specific spot that I would say is my favorite performance place or a performance space, but I like the like medium-sized crowds where
Mm.
you can be like a little bit more intimate with the people that are paying attention, but there are still some people that are kind of just in the background that aren't like, it's not all eyes on me, right?
Yeah.
Not all of us there, but I'm not just drowning in the background of an environment. I like that middle ground, that gray area.
Mhm.
Those performance spaces are nice.
Yeah, that kind of like distance, but still being able to connect with some and I guess it would be feel like less pressure perhaps. Is that a
Yeah.
fair way to? Yeah.
I like it because at the beginning of the set, it always feels like less pressure because there's less people paying attention.
Mm.
And then as my set progresses, because I do storytelling in with it, I guess it gets more people's attention and they start paying attention to my voice. And usually by the end of the set, at least 90% of the people in the building are paying attention to what I'm doing. So that's really cool and rewarding too.
That's awesome. So how do you approach storytelling, especially with like drawing in the crowd to it when you have like those medium-sized crowds?
I just say what I feel is going to kind of give a brief synopsis of what the next song that I'm going to do is,
Mm,
and maybe throw in like a little something that relates personally to people in the crowd. It's taking the chunk of inspiration that created the song and just kind of breaking it down into like a little munchy bit for everybody
yeah.
to digest while they listen to the song. And oh, okay, so that's how she felt about it and how she resolved the problem in that whole situation.
Mm. Yeah, I love that term like munchy bit. And like how do you when you think about because I mean so much goes into writing a song in terms of it's kind of like the totality of our experience wrapped up into like a little um, a couple of lines or a verse or whatnot. So when you think about creating those munchy bits, and I'm going to use that term all the time now. I love it. When you're creating that munchy bit, how do you decide what to whittle out of that and what gets to actually stay in?
Um, I'm a very visual thinker. So
Mm,
when I come up with a song and I'm thinking of like the storyline that's in it, I take kind of like maybe a sentence that's a summary of the intro and like the problem, and then a sentence that kind of is either the feeling that I got as a result of it or
mm,
a hint at the lesson that I got as a result
yeah,
of it. And it's kind of like it's going to leave whoever's listening wanting to listen to this song for the sake
yeah,
of the story that I've teased in my little munchy bit.
yeah. That's awesome. So like hooking them in and capturing their attention very fast.
Yeah,
Uh, that's awesome. How has your like, and maybe it hasn't, so I'll reframe this, but like, has your approach to storytelling and just like the different experiences, or when you think of different seasons of your life too, does that alter your approach to storytelling, or has it stayed kind of consistent across, or if it's like different themes at different seasons, does that shift it at all any way?
absolutely. My storytelling or even the sets that I perform, they shift based on if I know what crowd I'm going to be speaking to, age
Mm,
groups, if there's like a certain theme or topic that needs to be discussed and I have actual songs that relate to it, I'll tell my stories because I, that's why I'm there. I have something that's relatable, something that's going to be validating and
mm,
hopefully help somebody on that subject matter, right? So yeah, it has the seasons have an influence, the theme, the purpose of the show or event, why I'm there, it all has an influence on the type of story that I'm going to tell
mhm.
in the time that I'm given.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, when you like go through different seasons and you're writing based on them, like what are some of the most impactful things that have contributed to that? Or like even if it's if you want to take like an example of one song rather than looking at the broad or whichever way you want to approach this question, what are some of those elements that really impact that?
Some of the seasonal, like just the shifts in like mental, emotional mood swings,
Mm,
because it seems almost cyclical for certain people to go through certain highs and lows with the seasons. Some people that have, seasonal affective and are like really, really affected by the
mm,
different changes of seasons. And some people it's just like because their finances will shift or different holidays are coming up and there's different pressures that are applied, right?
mhm,
So that's all socially like relatable. And
mhm,
yeah, it's important that I speak to those things in the times that they're happening because a lot of my songs do offer some sort of resolution or some sort of feeling of validation and like okay there's still hope like
mm,
you
yeah.
got through this too and I'm listening to something that sounds just like what I'm going through and they got through this so like we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, that hope piece is so essential and important. Um, if you don't mind me asking, what are some things that have really contributed in your own life to needing that like hope and how you incorporate it in your storytelling?
Oh, some things. There's things that I talk about in my songs all the time.
Mm,
Some things like absences of fathers.
mm,
I had a stepdad that kind of left abruptly in my teen years, so that was like a touching on like the theme of abandonment and stuff like that, and everything that
mm,
led up to it. And then there was relationships and going through the coming of age in your teen years, and everything like that, as well as the coping mechanisms that I chose, which weren't the greatest through my teen years and my early 20s, and that leading to substance abuse and different experiences that go hand in hand with being out in the streets, kind of, being
Mm,
impulsive and not really caring much about yourself. And then eventually learning that caring about yourself is important and
yeah.
that it feels good to care about yourself and take care of yourself. So, like, all of these things, just life experiences contribute to the story that
Hmm.
I tell and the inspiration for the music.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, just like those different, I guess, hardships and to get to the other side of it and to see that it can be overcome. And I'm wondering, like, for you, as you were going through that, as like a young adult and teen and whatnot, were there any songs, or not even necessarily songs, but like art as a whole, did that contribute to kind of like your sense of hope? And is that something that you were also on the other end of back then?
Absolutely. That's
Mm,
part of the reason why I really liked making music, because the feeling that I received when listening to music that spoke to me, or like coming across that one song that's just like, who is watching me? How do they know my life right now?
mm,
Like, those, yeah,
yeah,
there's classified through my early teen years and my late teen years. He had a lot of music coming out, and
mm,
he actually, I think, dropped an album like the day before or the day after my 23rd birthday that just was everything that I was going through at the time.
wow, that's
And I
awesome.
was floored by the accuracy of all the songs and everything like that. And it just, yeah, it really helped me to feel seen,
Mm,
even though like I don't know this person. I've
mm,
never met him really. And but that music comes out and you listen to it and you just like you can take a deep breath
mm,
almost. Like,
yeah,
okay, now I can stress about it less because it's not just in my head. Like other people are out there experiencing this too.
yeah,
And there's that hope it comes out. And yeah,
mm,
that I want to share that feeling with people.
yeah. Yeah, so as you're working on new music and new songs and writing these stories, do you think about it mostly from like, this is what I want, what I'm feeling and what I want to share? Or do you feel like there's a part of you that thinks about kind of what someone on the receiving end would be looking for in that song, or, and how do those pieces play together?
Mm. And the process changes when writing music.
Mhm,
Sometimes, like the more intimate songs, I'll literally just start writing a journal entry and it'll
mm,
turn into a song. And I just like go with it. And I start out crying and writing and freaking out. And by the end of it, I'm calm. I've said what I need to say, and it's therapy, right?
mhm,
Some songs have come out like that, where other songs, if I'm in a room collaborating and we've got a theme at hand, for example, then I'm taking that theme and, because I'm such a visual creative, it'll show me like a scene or a story and like
mm,
characters that develop in this scene and story. And then I'm just putting that to words as, as we're collaborating to the beat, to the song that's there. So
that's
yeah, it
awesome.
changes, but
Mhm, yeah. Do you find that there's uh, I guess, is it more about like the collective of whether you're writing alone or with others, or is it, are there sometimes certain moods or I guess like topics that you'll more easily gravitate towards one or the other?
ooh, there's definitely like all of those things contribute. When I'm
Yeah.
with different people, different topics get discussed, and um, when I have the option to like lead a topic, sometimes it's it comes from something that I went through that day or that week that's really sticking with me, and I'm like, okay,
Mm,
this is our group exercise for the day, and I'll write out like a hook and like, okay, let's build around this. And it's always different. Just
mhm.
really depends on what the inspiration is in that time.
That's cool. Have you ever had anyone like at any of your shows or like even afterwards who has been influenced by your art in terms of just like sharing that they've been able to have like that relating piece and that they've been touched by it in that way?
Yeah,
Mm,
actually, those are some of my favorite moments after performing. Is usually I get really anxious before I get on stage, and then as soon as I'm done, it's almost like when I start performing, I put the panic attack on pause. And then when I'm done, it just goes right back to where I was. So I have to like kind of run away, catch a breath. and people will come and find me in that moment where I'm catching my breath and I'm just like, sometimes I'll be doubting myself. Sometimes I'll be celebrating what I just did. Sometimes I'll have messed up and I'll be like beating myself up a little bit. But somebody will find me and they'll tell me, this song where you said this, it really spoke to something that I was going through and I've never heard it like talked about in that way before. I was like, thank you. And had people thank me for performing the music that I've written, and that I can't even really explain. It's
Mhm.
that beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's such a good feeling to know that people are being touched by your work and to have essentially lives changed and just like the perspective of how they're viewing their circumstance. That's a huge thing for a lot of people. So yeah. Yeah. Has there ever been like I guess moments where so especially like I'm thinking about like your panic attackness. If you think to your early days as an artist to where you are now, have your I don't know if this is the right word for it, but like coping strategies or the way that you manage that changed on stage compared to when you first started out. And I'm thinking in particular, like any viewers who may be watching who are wanting to get into art but feel like, oh, like I'm too nervous to perform. And that realization that like everyone's nervous to perform, it's always a part of it.
Yeah, it's always a part of it. And I think the thing that's shifted most for me is my psychological tools that help me. Because before I would get nervous and I would just start thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. And I would get stuck in that I'm gonna mess up and all of those negative like spiral things that happen when you start to freak out a bit. But over the years, I've researched and I've talked to other people with similar problems and counselors and therapists. And this concept of turning your nervousness psychologically into excitement for what you're about to be doing has helped a lot. It's helped tremendously because you're feeling the same thing physiologically. It's that adrenaline's pumping. You're starting to prepare for whatever could go wrong. Like you're in that fight or flight, and you got to choose like how you're going to respond to it psychologically. Like, am I going to freak out and shut down, or am I going to get pumped up and use this to my advantage? And like, so that's what I've shifted into starting to do. A big example of that would be at the We Day performance. That was over 5,000 people at the SR Center. And when DJ Seath was on stage cutting up his beats and getting everybody hype while the crowd was pouring in, I was behind the big screen they had set up, running up and down the bleachers and like around the back where they couldn't see me. And I was like doing jumping jacks and I was like, holy crap, this is the biggest crowd that I've ever performed in front of. I don't know what I'm gonna do if I don't run this off and turn it into like me dancing and getting really hyped to his music. I'm probably gonna pass out. Like, so that was the first time that I really used that tool and was like, okay, it's effective. It's super effective. Got up on the stage, I didn't fall, I didn't pass out, I didn't mess up. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, and essentially just like refocusing the energy, I guess is a way of saying
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Shifting it from, oh my gosh, I'm gonna freak out, like I'm gonna mess up to, you know what, I'm just really excited to do this and I
Mhm.
really want to do well. Like that's why I
Mhm.
feel so nervous. It's like I just want to do my best.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming from a place where I guess your storytelling mentality for you is very much about like eh, if I can say it this way, like opening your heart and pouring out like what where you were in those different experiences. So I'm wondering like are there certain songs that you find uh, you get more anxious to perform or is it kind of just like the same across the board?
There are songs that I can honestly say I wrote 3 or 4 years before I ever performed them because it
Mhm.
took me that long to rehearse them enough times to not cry or something
Mm,
like in the middle of telling the story because it's extremely personal. It's stuff that I've gone through and it brings up a lot of feelings. So
mhm.
like there's a cappella track called Letter to a Zero that I wrote in 2015 and the first time I performed it was in 2019
Oh,
because it was years and years and years of me being like, okay, I'm gonna put it on this set and being rehearsing that set leading up to the show and the night before being like, okay, I have to drop it. I have to replace it with a different one because I can't do that. I'm still getting choked up.
mm.
So yeah, there's definitely certain songs that I have to rehearse 1,000 times and cry through 1,000 times until I can finally get the control to get it out as a piece of work, like a piece of art.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and there's something like so I think raw and beautiful about music that just naturally brings out that ability to heal, and tears are often so much a part of that like healing process. So getting to a point where it's, I guess, like that, I don't like the term like further along in your journey, but like essentially like you're healed to a moment of being able to share the healing versus like um, still kind of being caught up in it yourself. Is that a fair way of saying it, or?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, you know, there comes a certain point where the wound is healed enough that it doesn't burn when you touch it anymore.
yeah, yeah. That's a perfect way of saying that. Yeah. Yeah, so when you string songs together to with like for a whole set in terms of having these different stories and them coming from like these very vulnerable emotions, um, how do you strategically like build a set off of that? And do you like, because I know different artists have different approaches in terms of stringing together songs that are the same emotion or sometimes like spreading that one out in between, or what is your approach as an artist with that?
It usually takes a couple of reworks. Like I'll have a
Yeah.
couple of songs in mind that I want to for sure perform. And if it's like 3 or 4 songs, but I have to fill up a full half hour, then I'll find songs that I created prior to the one that I want to perform and then after, or like, I'll put them in there and then I'll add songs that fit the theme or would progress the story in a way that makes sense for the ones that I want to perform.
Okay. That's cool. So when you present kind of like as a full story rather than like stories kind of segregated. Like it's all flowing together to tell one overall um, story from start to end. Is that?
Yeah, it's a bunch of
Oh, cool.
different stories that I'm able to kind of take the story and make an overarching story
Oh,
from.
awesome. It's almost like reading like a chapter book, and each song is the next chapter sort of feel. That's really
Exactly.
cool. That's great. Yeah, that's a really cool approach. Um, so just kind of like thinking in terms of audiences and viewers for this podcast, do you feel like each time you perform, then the overall story changes because you can pull out different parts of your like essentially replace a chapter with a different song. What do you feel like people who don't pay attention to a whole set might be missing then from, because I know like sometimes especially if you're at events where it's like almost coffee house style, people are kind of tuning in and checking out and then tuning in again and checking out. For you, like how is your communication style with that story in terms of um, allowing people to get that deeper story and get something out of it compared to like just the story of the song on its own?
Hmm. How would I say? It's almost like it's more broken down than just even a chapter book. It's like a
Mm.
series almost. You're
Yeah.
taking episodes, right? So if somebody walks out on the first 2 episodes of my like 7 and they come back in on 3, they're still going to be able to pick up from my lyrics and the
Hmm.
energy in the song, as well as I do a bit of a recap before the next munchy bit because it all flows together after it's been built to the point where I'm performing. So yeah, there's a very essay style that I do this where like I'll kind of retouch back on different themes and different
Hmm.
things that I've said and tie it all together so that if people are missing half or missing the ending, they'll still get the gist.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and um like I like the whole like episode view in terms of if you miss one you can still follow the overall theme of the show for um do you feel like as an artist when you're connecting songs and like having those munchy bits in between to get from one song to the other, how do you shape uh, I'm trying to think of how to word this, like how do you shape your flow in terms of uh, because every time that you, I guess even the Munchie bit itself could change the story a little bit. So do you have one that you use like the same Munchie bit every time you play a song, or do you shift up what that looks like and like what pieces of it you're bringing to the forefront based on kind of which songs it's situated between?
The latter. I definitely
Okay.
shifted about based on which songs it's situated between, and because there's greater gaps of time between different songs if I'm gonna like perform something that I wrote in 2018 and something that I wrote in 2020, but there's like 15 songs in between that are different pieces of the story. I've got to choose the one song that kind of summarizes and fits the theme of the story that I'm trying to write now to progress, so that it's not just jumping from this spot to this spot. There's like a little bit of an in between that bridges that whole gap. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I'm almost picturing it like that. What series was it? Like Goosebumps series as a kid, where they had the choose your own adventure versions, where you could flip to different pages and create a different one. That's kind of what I'm equating your songwriting to.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some stories that have influenced you in your own life in terms of hearing other people's stories and your own writing approach?
Hmm. I feel like I'm influenced by the majority of people I come across because I
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
do listen intently to people's stories and where they're from. And it just says a lot about who they are and what kind of potential they have, and those types of things about people fascinate me. So like I'm not a very like social people person. I'm infatuated by people.
Mhm.
They're so intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So especially other artists, to get the opportunity to talk to somebody in a way that gives me a deeper view in how they think or why they act a certain way or why they believe a certain thing, where they came from. It all influences me,
Mm.
because it all becomes another little piece of what made me who I am. Like, um,
Yeah, it's almost like well, this is gonna sound weird, but like collecting pieces of people and then like building like
yeah,
they just get like put into like the little not holes in the heart, but like that's how I kind of view it. I don't know if that's like, but like when I collect people, they become a part of your heart and
yeah.
they just all like fit together.
Connect with somebody that becomes a part of your network, and you've just always got this little piece of how they influenced you and how they inspired you to carry
Mhm.
with you in your memories and in your energy. They
Yeah.
definitely will affect your energy. It's,
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So what have been some of the most influential people that you have kind of like taken on during the years and who have just become like the, I guess, the deeper central part of you?
hmm. Influential people like locally, in the sense of people that I work with and speak to,
Or
or
anyone really, just like the I call them like heart forever friends. I don't know if that's a good term, but just like not that other people aren't
have a
important,
term
but
I use called soul siblings. They're like
yeah.
your siblings, but they're just like in your heart. We're
Mhm.
siblings. So yeah, I have a couple of close friends that do music that I've continued to speak with and associate with through the difficult times that I've been experiencing recently.
Mhm.
And my kids influence me.
Mhm.
They always influence me to try and steer down a better path for myself and just be better than I was yesterday. And it's hard to really pick just one or
Mhm.
a handful of people, because the women that I work with and the cultural things that I'm a part of, they're incredibly inspirational and
Mhm.
influential people, as well as the other people that I work with. And I believe dreamers. Like, I feel, and New York City. Can't wait to get back involved more with New York City. It's been a while, but
Mhm.
I've been seeing what they're doing from a distance, and I'm looking forward to getting back on board with them and doing more active in the scene, community-based work with them again. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, really love everybody's influences.
Yeah, that's great. So for viewers who may not know what Sioux York City is, do you want to give like a brief synopsis of what that is and how they can find out more about it?
So, New York City is an urban arts collective that was founded, I think we're looking at almost 12 years, 12 or 13 years ago now, and by DJ Seath and a handful of other hip hop enthusiasts. There were MCs, b-boys, DJs, beatboxers, and yeah, it's just volunteer run. Anybody who wants to be a part of it and has something to contribute, like, you're more than welcome to start joining meetings and, you know, network with us and join in on shows if you want some stage time. We'll do all kinds of different things, whatever we can think of as creatives. If we get enough people on board, we'll make it happen.
Mhm.
That's what New York City does around here. So yeah, we do a lot of fundraising events. We've been part of different fundraisers for local charities and local organizations that put calls out for different things.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know, we're just very local, loving urban arts collective.
It's a great
Kind of
framing
drawing a
of it.
buzz here.
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah, and I'll try and put like, do they have social media? I believe they do.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can put links below for any viewers who are interested in knowing those. Um, so what do you see as like the value and I guess like the purpose drivenness of storytelling in our society, and what does it bring to our society?
it's culture, storytelling. That's how we passed on knowledge before we were really writing, before we were drawing. Storytelling is just a part of human nature. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we learn, that's how we share, that's how we evolve. And for it to have become music, like for storytelling to have evolved into this language that we call music, is just phenomenal to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Because it really is a universal language. Somebody can listen to a song that's completely foreign as far as like the tongue goes, but if it has the right energy, they'll still dance to it or
Mm-hmm.
possibly even cry to it, depending on how it's composed, right?
Yep.
So yeah, storytelling in music, it's just natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's crucial as far as I as far as I'm concerned. There's always some kind of story to be told
Mm-hmm.
behind every single song.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. What would your advice be to someone who's like looking to get into storytelling, but maybe they don't view themselves as a storyteller, as a musician? Because I know sometimes like uh, sometimes we have this tendency to forget about like the broadness of storytelling and view it as like, oh, if you're storytelling, you're sitting down and writing paragraphs, when that's not the case. So what would your advice be to someone who wants to get into the space but may not know like where to start or um, how to start to shift their view to actually understand themselves to be a storyteller?
Journaling,
Mm.
as as cheesy and as maybe obvious as it is to some people, journaling is a great way to
Mhm.
practice telling stories. Because if you're just learning how to recap the story of your day,
Right.
eventually that process will begin to apply to other things that you want to tell a story about.
Mhm.
And as you're writing and rereading what you've written, those patterns of storytelling from beginning to middle to end and the fluidity and flow of it, they tend to develop naturally. And the easiest thing to base a story off of is what you went through that day in my experience.
Mhm.
If you're not trying to fetch something creative yet, you're just trying to get in the flow of writing a story, journaling, even if it's on a phone or something or in a notepad,
Mhm.
starting with, this morning I did this. It doesn't have to be the best story ever. It just has to teach you to get in the flow of beginning, middle, end so that you can start to present a story.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. That's great. Um, And so what are you hoping like in terms of being a storyteller, what people take away from your stories? What do you feel like is the most important element that they get out of it that may not necessarily be um, obviously like when we create a product and like a story or like a final version, it's sort of that co-creation piece where whoever engages with it is going to see it a little differently. So I'm not necessarily like a particular um, way that you would view it, but just like overall, what do you feel like people walk away from your stories with? What is the most valuable and hopeful piece that they get from your perspective?
Walking away from my stories, I'd hope that people just gain a better understanding of what happens around them and how they interact with it, or how they choose to respond or react to it. Like just greater, broader understanding of
Hmm.
something that pertains to them, because that's not up to me what it is that hits home with them.
Yeah.
But if something hits home and just kind of like, oh, okay, and that epiphany feeling, I love,
Yeah.
and I hope that people would leave my shows and their stories with that epiphany.
It's awesome. Yeah, so if we want to chat now about the March event that's coming up, for those viewers who don't know, it's running from March 10th to the 12th, and it'll be digital online. And you can follow Fringe North to find out more about where you can plug into that. But sure, so do you know at this point what you will be bringing forward for that event, or are you still kind of formulating it? Because I've gotten different answers for this piece.
Yeah, I'm formulating it. I've
Okay.
got two songs that I want to present this time around, and I have a 30-minute block that I'm going to be filling. So
Mm.
I've got quite the story to fill out and tell to people.
That's
So I'm
awesome.
not going to even hint at the songs that I've chosen yet.
Okay.
Uh,
Sounds
it's going to be all different, various stuff from like back when I first started making music and performing, up to things that I haven't even shown some of my artist friends yet. So
exciting.
yeah, that's pretty much all I can really say right now. Because the more I talk about it, the less I'll actually work on it.
That's
That's just
fair.
a personal issue.
That's fair.
But
Yeah, that's completely fair. They say there's actually studies in psychology that if you share something like you're psychologically, we're always looking for an end. So if you talk about working on a project, you're less likely to actually see it through because you already can see the end. But if you don't, then your mind is like searching to get to the end. Just a little psychological side note for viewers.
yeah,
but,
I learned
but
that
yeah,
too. I love that. I
yeah,
love that tidbit. And I realized once I learned that, I was like, ooh, that's a me thing. I do that all the time. I talk, 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 talk. And then I'm like, okay, I feel like it's done.
yeah,
So now I've got to re-find that inspiration to actually work on it and get it done. I'm just not going to talk about it. I'm going
yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, sounds good. I completely relate to too. I tend to be someone that if I've talked about it, it becomes then just like constant procrastination. But, um, but yeah, if you wanted to talk a little bit about like how did you get involved in the event and how did you find out about it? And yeah, like how did you get involved?
This time around, I had a friend, Nicole, reach out to me
Mm.
on Instagram. She just, well, she knew that the event was happening. I'm not 100%. I'm pretty sure she's a coordinator.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's on our team.
she's a coordinator. She's
Or
on the team.
they're on. Sorry, they're on our team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my apologies. My apologies, Nicole. They're on the team. They reached out to me and they had me in mind. They figured that I would be a good fit for this festival and asked me if I would perform. And I agreed.
Awesome. So when you first got involved, did you know at that point what you were getting involved with? Or like, I know sometimes we have, there's like a process with formulating an event for those who have never been in the space of event formation before. Um, at that point, did you know like how you were going to be involved in terms of coming on with music, or like, was it very much kind of unknown to you at that point?
The event was presented a while ago when it was thought to be held at the museum.
Yeah, initially it was going to be live.
Yeah, it was going to be a live show, and I was all about it because I haven't done a live performance in a
Mhm.
long time. So right from the get-go, when it was presented to me, I was like, Fringe, yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, how has COVID been impacting you as an artist? Because I know like a lot of artists haven't been able to have like those live performances, and is that something that you've really missed? Well, I feel like we've all missed it. That's just like a given at this point. But have you been able to adapt to find other artistic outlets in terms of doing some digital things, or like how has your experience been with COVID?
Yeah, I've been able to adapt to some virtual things. As far as being an artist goes, it's forced me to expand into like actually creating different things that I've wanted to do, like
Mhm.
workshops. Creative writing workshops is something that I've
Nice.
been toying with the idea of for a really long time now. But now with COVID reducing the amount of time that we can invest in live shows and that we have to create tickets and do the promotion for all of that. I have this abundance of time to spend with myself figuring out how to flesh out a workshop for people. So I actually have been able to develop a workshop, and I've gotten opportunities now to begin actually doing the workshop online starting
That's
next
awesome.
month. So
That's
CONiKA
awesome.
Works is actually a workshop that developed as a result of COVID. So
That's really
awesome
cool.
for that.
Are viewers able to get involved with that if they wanted to sign up for one, or how can they find out more?
At this point in time, I'm kind of just piloting with a few people, a few organizations that I've been speaking with. But after my first workshop, I'll be advertising it more. It's called CONiKA Works, and it'll be part of my artist page on Facebook, and I'll be promoting it on Instagram as well when it's
Awesome.
more solidified. When
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it's something that people can contact me and ask me specifically for, it'll
Mhm.
be there.
Awesome. So we will definitely throw your socials below as well, so that anyone watching right now, if you want to find out more, just follow CONiKA and you'll be able to see it when it becomes available.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So being involved in this March event, what are you hoping as an artist to get out of the experience of being involved in it?
I'm hoping to be able to improve my performance abilities at this point, because having shows often, I was more disciplined
Mm,
with my health, my habits, and my rehearsals, and I just had better ability to just drop a performance at any time. But now I need a couple of weeks of preparation to
mm,
be able to do maybe 3 or 4 songs. So I'm hoping, with the fact that I have to do a full half hour, I know I could splice it together and just do like 1 or 2 songs at a time, but I really want to do just a run through, a full
mhm.
take, a full set. And yeah, it's motivating me already to cut back on bad habits and to
Good.
increase the better habits.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like uh, well, hopefully when I was gonna, but like I was gonna say, as COVID opens back up and everything gets like more on track, we all have some like patterns to reframe in our lives and get back into. Like it's gonna be an odd feeling. Like I haven't left my house pretty much just for medical appointments in 2 years. I don't even do my own grocery shopping because I'm high risk. So, but but yeah, it's just like it's gonna be a weird feel to re-implement all of those routines and those healthy habits to get back into the flow for sure.
Gonna be interesting change, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And what are you hoping that viewers and participants in the festival will get from your involvement in it?
I'm hoping that if anybody's returning that saw the last performance, they'll just be happy to be getting more of what I
Mm,
have to do this time around. Like I said, I'll be doing a full 30 minutes, and it's going to be a full CONiKA set, the full experience of my introduction, my acapella. That's one of the songs that I'll say I'm doing because it's not one of the two that I chose. There's a mandatory acapella at the opening of most of my sets.
okay. Mm,
And yeah, I'm hoping that they come away with it with a better understanding of what led me up to do the Fringe last time, do the
oh,
Fringe
that's awesome.
performance that we chose last time.
Yeah, so kind of like that prequel.
A little bit.
Like, that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. So, I am noticing the time, so is there anything else that you wanted to share with viewers before we start to wrap up?
I don't know. At this point, I
Yeah,
feel like we've covered pretty much everything really well.
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you CONiKA for coming on and for taking time out of your day to be here with us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our viewers, miigwech, merci, gracias, and we will see you all on the next episode. Oh, and the event is March 10th to 12th. Have a great day.
All
Bye.
right, thank you for having me.